after you see my solution. Okay, question 4. Now, question 4 can be difficult because it seems very confusing. What exactly are you looking for? So I will try to help with that. And unfortunately, like what you were asking just now, no, you can't clarify about this question because this question actually quite clear. Yes, it's quite clear. So I asked him like whether people can clarify about this question. I think he did say that like they can clarify about the phrasing, but he will not clarify about the logic. Because the main bulk of the logic actually is kind of hidden right here. Yes, this one. You are always looking for the leftmost longest sequence. This is a very important note here. You're actually looking for the leftmost longest sequence. What does that mean? When you iterate the string from left to right, you always look for the longest sequence first. You remove that. And once you have removed that, you look for whether there's the same length of that longer sequence. So the longest possible sequence in A to Z is 26. So don't forget there's 26 letters in alphabet. So important. Then again, you can just figure out during lab test by writing A to Z and then count the number. That's doable too. Okay, so 26 characters, A to Z, the longest possible sequence. So as you can see, you always look for leftmost longest, right? So the iteration here is just iterate from left to right. 26, got any repeated sequence or not? Don't have. Left to right, 25, have any repeated or not? Left to right, 24, got any repeated or not? So that's really what you're just looking for. You're looking from iterate from 26 down to 2, looking for the sequence. And tada, that's just this question. Then again, that's first part of the iteration logic. Now the tougher part is, how do I figure out whether something is a sequence? Because sequence can be like A, C, E, D, B. Yeah, A, C, E, D, B. Like, it's jumbled up, but they are all in a they are by right all in a sequence. If you sort them, it's a sequence. So we're gonna approach that part. Now, your expectation coming into CS101 is you shouldn't really be thinking too much about all the functions. If you have a coding background, you shouldn't be thinking about, can I use a sort method over here and all these things? Because I don't believe they teach you, other than ICE, I think got an optional, they teach you there's this extra method that you can use. You can explore those methods, right? But CS101 kind of force you to think about things in a simple manner. So there's actually a more efficient way to check whether something is a sequence. Now I'm going to share on that. So how do you tell whether something is a sequence? Let me kind of list it out. Okay, so just now I give A, C, D, D, E. So this itself is a sequence because I know that it has A, it has B, it has C, it has a D, and it has a E. Now they're all jumbled up. Checking this is very difficult. Now there's a much easier way to check this is by imagining all characters don't exist first. And how can I imagine all characters don't exist? I create an array of size 26 and I put everything as false and so on. Okay, now if I put everything as false in the size 26 array, now what can I do is I'm really just going through all these arrays and then looking for a particular character. So what should my first one correspond to? My first one correspond to A. My second one correspond to B. My third one correspond to C. And so on. So then after that, all I need to do is I iterate through this array after I check everything. And I find for the first true. So let's say the first true is here. And I just need to find consecutively whether everything is true. If the sequence length is supposed to be 5, I should have 5 true in a row. If I find true, 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 and then next one is false, there's only 4 true, subsequence fail. That should be the way that you can check for. However, there is a problem with this implementation. The problem is if I'm only checking true or false, there could be potential issue like, let's say what if there's like AA, BCD. Yeah. My sequence technically is ABCD. But then after that, right, this will return me true, even though this is supposed to be 5 characters. If your logic for catching the sequence length is okay, then this is fine. Right? Because sequence length gonna check that it's only 4 trues versus 5 sequence length. But another way you can kind of go with it is just change all the false and true to however number of time it repeated. So for example, every time you find a particular letter, you just plus 1. So from 0 to plus 1, then you just find everything is 1. That would probably be a much easier way to visualize that. So I will come up with a function that check for sequence first. Now what the sequence do is I take in a particular pointer to some part in the middle of the string, and then I pass in the sequence length. Now this sequence length is how long I'm trying to look for that something. Now then in this case now, what I can do is I can actually know that the size that we want to deal with over here is 26. Oh. Right, there's 26 character, and that means the frequency of each character, I can also think about it as starting in an array starting everything from 0. So if everything starts from 0 over here, then I can kind of play with this way. Then what I need to do here is I just do a for loop, right? Do a for loop, do a for loop here, and doing this for loop of the sequence length, I can go through every single character that's starting from S, and then after that I just look for that particular position. Now, so to get the position, right, is really just going to be the current letter S of I minus like this. So if I minus A minus A is going to give me 0, then that's going to be matching the 0 index of the array. So B minus A is 1, then you're going to get the first index. And then after that, I'm just going to do a plus because I find this number of frequency. And then after that, eventually once I done going through for this, I can look through the whole frequency. I can look through the whole frequency array. 26 size. Troublesome. Just do 26. I plus plus. And with this, I can just check if frequency of I is more than 1. It's more than 1. Then I should return false because something already repeated more than once. Include standard bool. Oh, why is it more than 1? Because I would expect the sequence only have every character once. It shouldn't be 2 times. A, B, C, D is not valid. So I only want to look for A, B, C, D. Yeah. So more than 1. But of course, can it be 0? Yes, it can, because if it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G onwards is all 0. So that's why I'm checking for more than 1. This is to check whether it is valid. Checking that there's no repeat.
I think this means frequency only cannot even have 1. Here frequency I is not even 1 because it's more than 1. If it's 1, you will return false.
If it's 1, it will.
You will not return false.
Yeah, it will not return false.
Oh,
yeah, correct. Now, then after that, really, like just now what I said, I have to look through the whole array until I find the starting point. And to find the starting point, what I really need to do is I need to keep track of whether I found the start. Okay, so at the start, I wouldn't have found the start because I haven't even started finding. And then after that, I want to check how much my consecutive count is. So Once I find the start, I'm going to add 1 to the consecutive count, and then I'm going to keep track of the consecutive count. And then once I find a 0, or at the end of the array, then I just compare the consecutive count with the sequence length. If they are the same, sequence found. Not the same, no found. For loop. And looping through I less than 26, I plus plus. If frequency I is equal to 1, then found start, and then after that consecutive count plus plus equal to true. Yeah. So once I found it, then just keep going on. But of course, if only, this should be fine. So I will just set it to true. In the case that it hasn't been found yet, right? So let me think. Am I missing anything? So in this case over here, this is going to be 0 already, right? So if this is already 0, I need to make sure that I haven't found the start before first. So if I already have found the start before, meaning that I 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and then I hit a 0, right? This is the point where I break the loop. Because I found the 0 means I have reached the end, no point continue checking. Because if I keep continue on, maybe after this 0, the next one is a 1. Then I'll counted every single number. Then we broke the logic. So once this, really the return statement here is just check whether the consecutive count is equal to the sequence length. If the consecutive count equal to the sequence length, tada, we are actually matching out whatever we want to find. So because at the start we iterate only the sequence length, we should really expect it to have that same number of digits. Like we iterate 5 digits, all 5 of them should be in the sequence. So once you have this, right, everything seems already pretty nice to work with, except we want to find a way to remove the characters. Okay, I'm going to show two approach. Approach 1 of removing characters. So let's say I have hello A, B, C, D, whatever behind. Let's assume the only repeated, the only proper sequence we have is here, A, B, C, D. Now, before this, maybe it's a Z, and after this, maybe it's a Y. What I can do, approach 1, is I remove that character first. I remove the ABCD, and then after that I do this whole sequence again. What is the issue here? The issue here is I actually created a new sequence that supposedly didn't exist. And when I created a new sequence that supposedly didn't exist, this actually kind of broke the thing, right? I shouldn't be playing around with a sequence that didn't exist from the start. So if you want to know, to validate this supposed issue, you can look at question 4 in the paper. And I believe example 2. Example 2 only have a new sequence. Only have a new sequence because it removed the A, B, C, D first, then the Z and Y appear. So you are supposed to cover against this case, so you cannot actually keep removing every single time you found a match. So what does that mean? This means in order for us to solve this problem, we cannot remove anything until the end. Now, the question actually very nice and told us that this string will only contain characters of lowercase. There are no spaces, no digits, no punctuation, no uppercase, anything else. So choose your favorite child of the family and then use that as a way to say that brother has been forgotten. Now, my favorite child of the family is a space. And so I will denote that whenever I find something, I'll remove them using a space. So if I do it this case here, this will now look like space, 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 space. And now this will no longer be a consecutive sequence where I find. And what that means is, over here, some of the logics I have is as I iterate through the string, if I find that Si is equal to a space, I can also already return false because my sequence shouldn't have a space. Now then after that, my if sequence logic is perfect. And for those that's in the class that I TA, I have always shared before, the reason why I recommend you write functions is so that you can test it. So I can do printf %d is sequence, and then after that I can actually try to print out whether there are any things that is a sequence A, B, C, D, and then I pass in a 4, and then I can also try if it's jumble up A, C, B, D, and then after that I can also try if this is 5. If this is 5 and then I have a space here. So if I test all these things, I should expect the last one to be false. Now then after that, that's why you write a function. It really helps you to be able to test your logic before you even go on write more code. If you can't even figure out the logic to get the sequence, then the question becomes a bit tougher. Now because we created a way to determine what to be removed, now we need to find a way to eliminate the spaces before we return the string. So I will take in something and I'll say delete space. And delete space just takes in the original string. And then after I'll remove all the spaces. So what I do is I go through the string, and then after I look for the position. What you can think about is this. Every single character that have a space, so like this, I have start off with this position at the head here. Now this is not a space, I leave it there. This is not a space, I leave it there. Not a space, I leave it there. This is a space, I stop it there. I now look for the first non-space, and then I'll put that character there. And then after that, now I start iterating two things at the same time. So in order for me to iterate two things at the same time, I can have the index that point to where I will put things at, and then after that I will just, for the rest of it, I will just iterate the I can name this as I and name this as J, whichever. And then after that I can just do this is less than the stir length. Whoa, that's not stir length, stir length. And then I pass in this, and then I do J++. And going through the stir length, then I just need to find if the stir I, the S I is not equal to a space. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the S at I position is going to be equal to the S at J position. J, yeah. So I check whether each characters are space. If it's not a space, I put it there. And then of course, since I put something there, I need to plus this, I need to plus that. And if in the case that this is a space, then what I do is I shouldn't be J++. And what I do is I just don't do anything, right? I don't do anything here. This will move the J pointer further forward, but I stay the I pointer still. So eventually they are gonna desync, but they are gonna find every single non-space character and it's yoink it there. So I have an empty else block, means yoink, delete. And after that, very straightforward from here is I'm just gonna start off from wherever my last pointer is, right? I've reached my last pointer here, and everything behind, as you know for all string, after the last string character that you want to preserve, everything is a null character. Or you can just replace only one. So if you want to replace only one, you can just say Si is equal to a null character. If you really a bit OCD here, you feel like there's a need to make everything null, sure, write a for loop over here and make everything a null character. But that's not super important here. So finally, I have the way to delete all the spaces. I have a way to replace, find all the sequence. The rest of the question will become quite straightforward. So I know that I need to edit the string directly because this is a void function. This is a void function. This function also doesn't expect me to return anything. There's no free method. So we know that this actually expect me to edit the string directly. So I'm going to start off by looking for what is the length of the string. This is so that I can iterate the string better. And just now we declared that the way that we are going to be initializing, the way that we're going to be looping this whole thing is we're going to start from the sequence length of the longest, which in this case we know that is 26. Longest possible sequence is 26, and sequence length, the shortest possible is 2. Did they specify? I mean, you should assume that it has to be, oh yeah, a sequence must contain at least 2 characters and at most 26. Yeah, if not, it doesn't make sense, right? Sequence length to be 1. So then after that, I'm really just iterating the sequence length downwards from the biggest to the smallest. And since they are talking about starting from the leftmost, it means that my starting index actually has to be starting from the leftmost, in this case 0. So my start is 0, and then the ending point of my start is actually just the length of the string minus the sequence length. I'm gonna have a plus minus 1 here. Okay, the start plus sequence length, this should be better. Should be less than length. Start plus sequence length should be, oh, start plus sequence length minus 1 should be less than length. Yes. I'm always struggling with this. And then start plus plus. Yeah. Okay, we'll know whether I'm wrong later on. I don't know whether there's a minus 1 plus 1. Then again, you can just compile a code, run it a few times. Then you'll know whether it's a minus 1 or plus 1. And then from here, I just really need to do the is sequence, pass in the string at the start length, and then after that, I'm just gonna dump in the sequence length over here. And if it is a sequence, then I have found the sequence. And what do we do to so-called remove them? We replace them with space. So I equal to 0, and then after I less than the sequence length, and then I plus plus. So this iterate those number of length, and then after that, for my string, I just need to do start plus I is equal to a space. And ta-da! That should be a bulk of your logic. After that, since we are done with iterating through the whole thing, we just need to remove the space. What do I name it? Delete space. And then I just pass in the string, then we are done. So the question here is actually much more straightforward if you are able to kind of break down the logic into which are the parts you need. Finding a way to determine whether something is a sequence, and then finding a way to delete the sequence without combining the string back together. And then after that, finally know how to loop through each of the characters. You realize the main loop over here become super simple if you guys are able to derive your own is sequence logic, and then derive your own way of removing the characters. So the really only challenging part of this question is knowing how to find the sequence and knowing not to do the careless mistake of combining the string into one before at the end. Okay, that will be it for this question.